The Riverside Estate was the kind of restaurant where reservations required 3 months' notice and a personal reference. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the water, white tablecloths gleamed under soft lighting, and the sommelier knew every guest by name. My father had chosen it for his 65th birthday celebration, calling it a venue befitting a man of my stature. 32 family members filled the private room. Dad sat at the head of the table in his Italian suit, silver hair perfectly styled, looking every bit the successful corporate attorney he'd been for 40 years. Mom sat beside him in pearls and Dior, her smile practiced and perfect. 65 years, Dad announced, standing with his wine glass. And I'm proud to say I'm surrounded by excellence. My children who've made me proud. My grandchildren who carry on our legacy. This is what success looks like. My brother Derek, 37, stood and raised his glass. To Dad, who taught us that achievement is everything. Who showed us that legacy matters. Who proved that the Reynolds name means something in this city. Everyone applauded. Derek had followed Dad into corporate law, made partner at 32, married his college girlfriend who came from old money. He was everything my father had ever wanted in a son. My sister Amanda, 34, stood next. To Dad, who never settled for mediocrity. Who pushed us to be our best selves. Who taught us that hard work and dedication create real success. More applause. Amanda was a surgeon at Johns Hopkins, published researcher married to another surgeon. 2 perfect children. Perfect house in the suburbs. Perfect life. Then there was me, Sophia Reynolds. 29 years old, wearing a simple black dress I'd owned for 3 years, sitting at the far end of the table between my teenage cousins. Sophia, Dad said, his voice carrying that particular tone of forced cheerfulness that barely masked disappointment. Would you like to say something? Happy birthday, Dad, I said simply. I hope it's a wonderful evening. Derek snorted into his wine. Short and sweet. Very appropriate. Derek, Mom said, but without any real reproach. The servers brought the first course, butter-poached lobster with caviar and microgreens. The kind of dish where each plate cost more than most people's weekly groceries. I watched my family dig in, comfortable in their assumptions about me, secure in their judgment. So, Sophia, my Uncle Richard said from across the table. He was a hedge fund manager, perpetually tan from his winter home in Palm Beach. What are you up to these days? So, working from home. Still working from my bedroom, actually, I said, taking a bite of lobster. The table went quiet for a moment, then someone, I think it was my cousin Brian, let out a poorly suppressed laugh. Your bedroom, Derek repeated slowly. At 29 years old, you're still working from your childhood bedroom at Mom and Dad's house? No, I have my own place. A 2-bedroom apartment downtown. I work from the 2nd bedroom. A home office, Amanda said in the same tone someone might say, a communicable disease. Sophia, you do understand that's not a real career, right? Working from home isn't the same as having an actual job. It works for me, I said. Works for you. Derek leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. Little sister, you're 29. When I was 29, I was already being considered for partner. Amanda was finishing her residency. What exactly have you accomplished? I set down my fork. I've built something I'm proud of. A website. My cousin Jennifer, who worked in marketing, said it like a joke. Sophia, we all have websites. That doesn't make us entrepreneurs. I didn't say I built a website. Then what? Uncle Richard pressed. What is this mysterious work you do from your bedroom that you're so proud of? Technology consulting, I said. Also not a lie. I consulted extensively on technology. For my own company. AI development and implementation. Derek's eyes lit up with amusement. AI development? You mean like ChatGPT? Sophia, those are billion-dollar companies with hundreds of engineers. You're not developing AI from your bedroom. Actually, she's probably doing data entry for some tech startup, Amanda interrupted, calling it AI development, to make herself feel better about not having a real career. Dad cleared his throat. Sophia, sweetheart, we're not trying to embarrass you. We're concerned. You dropped out of Stanford. I left Stanford, I corrected. There's a difference. You left one of the best computer science programs in the country, Dad continued, to pursue this technology thing. And here we are 7 years later and you're working from your bedroom. Living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Driving a car from 2015. Wearing clothes from discount stores. This dress is from Target, I confirmed. My cousin Amanda's wife, Patricia, gasped softly. To Dad's 65th birthday? Honey, no. It's clean and appropriate, I said. It's tragic, Derek said flatly. Dad, this is exactly what we were talking about last week. Sophia needs an intervention. She's almost 30, living like a college student, pretending she has a career when she's basically unemployed. I'm not unemployed. Then what do you make? Uncle Richard asked bluntly. Annual salary. What do you pull in from this bedroom business of yours? The table had gone completely silent, everyone watching me with a mixture of pity and curiosity. That's personal, I said. Derek laughed. Of course it is. Because the answer is embarrassing. Let me guess, 30,000? 40 if you're lucky. Derek, that's enough, Mom said, but again without any real conviction. No, Mom, it's not enough. Someone needs to say what we're all thinking. Sophia is the family disappointment. She had every advantage, Stanford, Dad's connections, family money, and she threw it all away to play entrepreneur in her bedroom. It's pathetic. The word hung in the air like poison. Pathetic. I wouldn't say pathetic, Amanda offered, trying to soften the blow. Maybe just misguided. Sophia, there's no shame in admitting this isn't working. You could go back to school, finish your degree, get a real job. Derek could probably get you something at his firm. Entry level, obviously, but it's a start. I don't need Derek to get me a job. Clearly you do, Derek said. Because whatever you're doing isn't working. You're 29, broke, living in a cheap apartment, working from your bedroom. That's not success, Sophia. That's failure. I took a sip of water, letting the crystal glass rest against my lips longer than necessary. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the city lights reflecting off the water. Somewhere in that skyline was my company's headquarters, 47 floors of glass and steel, housing 1,200 employees who were, at this very moment, revolutionizing artificial intelligence. Maybe we have different definitions of success, I said quietly. No, Dad said firmly. Success is objective. It's measurable. It's a stable career, financial security, a respectable position. Things your brother and sister have achieved. Things you've struggled with. Uncle Richard leaned forward. Sophia, I'm going to be direct with you because I care. You're wasting your potential. You were brilliant in high school. Everyone said so. You got into Stanford for God's sake. And you threw it away for this fantasy of being a tech entrepreneur. But the reality is, you don't have the resources, the team, or the infrastructure to build anything real. The actual AI companies, the ones making real money, they have massive funding, huge teams, years of development. You have a bedroom and a laptop. That's all I needed, I said. Derek shook his head. This is exactly the problem. You're delusional. You actually believe you're building something meaningful. The servers brought the second course. Wagyu beef with truffle butter and roasted vegetables. The conversation shifted as my family dug into their food, but the judgment lingered in the air, heavy and suffocating. Sophia could work for me, my cousin Brian offered. He ran a mid-sized marketing firm. I could use someone to manage our social media. It's not glamorous, but it's steady income. Benefits. A real paycheck. Social media management, I repeated. It's better than whatever you're doing now, he said, not unkindly. And honestly, at your age you need to start thinking practically. You're not getting younger. You need stability. I have stability. Do you? Amanda's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. Sophia, be honest with yourself. You're almost 30, working from your bedroom, probably making barely enough to cover rent. That's not stability. That's desperation. She doesn't even have a LinkedIn profile, Jennifer added, pulling out her phone. I searched for you last month when I was trying to recommend you for a job and there's nothing. No professional presence at all. I prefer to keep a low profile, I said. Derek burst out laughing. A low profile. That's what we're calling it. Sophia, you don't have a low profile. You have no profile. Because you haven't done anything worth profiling. You're invisible because you're irrelevant. Derek. Mom's voice finally had some force behind it. That's cruel. It's honest, he countered. We've spent 7 years tiptoeing around this, being supportive, giving her space to find herself. And where has it gotten us? She's still in the same place she was at 22. Still working from home. Still struggling. Still failing. Dad set down his fork. I think what Derek is trying to say, perhaps inelegantly, is that we're worried about you, Sophia. We want to see you succeed. We want to help you get back on track. I'm not off track. You dropped out of Stanford, Uncle Richard said. That's pretty much the definition of off track. I left because I had a better opportunity. Doing what? Derek demanded. Building an AI company in your bedroom? Do you have any idea how insane that sounds? Real AI development requires tens of millions in funding, teams of PhD researchers, massive computing infrastructure. You can't just decide to build an AI company any more than you can decide to build a spaceship in your garage. Some people built computers in their garages, I pointed out. That worked out pretty well for them. That was 40 years ago, Derek said. The barrier to entry was different. The technology was different. And more importantly, those people weren't delusional. They had actual products, actual businesses. You have excuses and fantasies. Amanda reached across the table, her hand covering mine. Sweetie, we love you. We do. But love means being honest. And honestly, this isn't working. You need to accept that your tech dream isn't going to happen and move on. There's no shame in it. Most startups fail. You gave it a shot, it didn't work out, now it's time to get a real job and build a real life. What if I told you it did work out? I asked. The table went silent. What do you mean? Mom asked carefully. What if I told you that my company is successful? That I didn't fail? Derek's smile was cruel. Then I'd say you're lying to yourself. Sophia, if your company was successful, we'd know about it. You'd have money. You'd have employees. You'd have an office. You'd have something to show for it besides a bedroom office and a Target dress. Maybe I do have something to show for it. Then show us, Uncle Richard challenged. Show us this successful company. Show us evidence that you're not just playing pretend in your apartment. I was about to respond when I noticed movement near the entrance to our private dining room. The restaurant manager, Thomas, was walking toward our table with a young woman in a blazer, carrying a professional camera bag and a notebook. My family was too absorbed in their debate to notice. The thing is, Derek was saying, you've always been the dreamer in the family. And that's fine for a kid. But you're 29 now. It's time to grow up. It's time to face reality. What reality is that? I asked, watching Thomas and the woman approach. That you're not special. That you're not going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs. That you're just an ordinary person who needs to get an ordinary job and live an ordinary life. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's what most people do. But you have to accept it. Maybe I'm not ordinary, I said. Derek laughed. Sophia, you're working from your bedroom. You're the definition of ordinary. Thomas reached our table. Excuse me, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt Mr. Reynolds' birthday celebration. Dad looked up, irritated at the interruption. Is there a problem with the service? No, sir, everything is perfect. But there's someone here to see Ms. Sophia Reynolds. She says she has an appointment. The table turned to look at me with undisguised curiosity. An appointment? Amanda asked. Sophia, who makes business appointments on a Saturday night? The young woman with Thomas stepped forward, extending her hand. Ms. Reynolds, I'm Sarah Chin from Forbes magazine. I know we confirmed for 7:30, but there was a mix-up with our reservation at the hotel. I hope it's okay that I came here instead. The silence that followed was absolute. Derek's champagne glass, which he'd been raising to his lips, froze in mid-air. Forbes. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, ma'am, Sarah said brightly, pulling out her recorder and notebook. Ms. Reynolds, I know this is family time, but are you ready for your 30 under 30-foot interview? My editor is really excited about the feature on you in Neural Dynamics. A 29-year-old female founder building a $4.1 billion AI company. It's exactly the kind of story our readers love. Derek's champagne glass slipped from his hand, hitting the table with a sharp crack. Wine spread across the white tablecloth like blood, but no one moved to stop it. 4.1 billion, Uncle Richard said faintly. Dollars. Yes, sir, Sarah confirmed, consulting her notes. That's the current valuation as of Neural Dynamics Series C funding round last month. though Ms. Reynolds maintained majority ownership, 68%. So her personal net worth is approximately $2.8 billion, making her one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. Amanda's hand, still on the table from when she'd reached out to me, began to tremble. Neural Dynamics, Brian said slowly, pulling out his phone. That's the AI company that just landed the Pentagon contract. The one that's revolutionizing machine learning. Indeed, Sarah said enthusiastically. Ms. Reynolds started the company 7 years ago, right after leaving Stanford. She built the initial neural network architecture in her apartment. I believe you mentioned it's still your primary workspace. And bootstrapped the entire operation until last year, when she accepted strategic funding to scale operations. Bootstrapped, Dad repeated, his face completely blank. You mean she funded it herself? Sir. Ms. Reynolds built Neural Dynamics with zero outside investment for the first 6 years. Her initial capital came from winning several AI competitions and selling some early proprietary algorithms. She kept her team small, just 12 engineers at first, all working remotely, and focused on building the most advanced machine learning infrastructure in the industry. Jennifer was scrolling frantically on her phone. There's a TechCrunch article from last month. Neural Dynamics secures $800 million Series C, values company at $4.1 billion. It says the company has contracts with the Department of Defense, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. It says they're the leading provider of adaptive AI systems in the world. That's correct, Sarah confirmed. He turned to me. Ms. Reynolds, I know we had planned to do this interview at your office, but since I'm here, would you mind if we start now? I promise to keep it brief. I know it's your father's birthday celebration. I glanced at my family. Every single person at the table was staring at me with identical expressions of shock. Actually, I said, could we do it here? I think my family would like to hear this. Sarah looked uncertain. It's going to be quite detailed. We'll be discussing your company's valuation, your technology, your plans for expansion. Are you sure you want to do that in front of? I'm sure, I said. My family has been very curious about what I do. This seems like a good opportunity to explain it. Sarah pulled out a chair and sat down, setting her recorder on the table. Wonderful. Let's start from the beginning. You left Stanford in your junior year. A decision that must have been difficult. What made you decide to drop out to pursue Neural Dynamics? I didn't drop out, I said, looking directly at Dad. I left because I'd already built something more valuable than a degree. I'd developed a new type of neural network architecture that could learn and adapt in ways the existing models couldn't. My professors wanted me to publish it as research. I wanted to build a company around it. And your family's reaction? They thought I was making a mistake, I said simply. They thought I was throwing away my future. Sarah nodded, making notes. But you persisted. You spent the next year developing the technology further, working from your apartment. Can you describe that time? I worked from my second bedroom. 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I lived on ramen and coffee. I slept maybe 4 hours a night. Everyone thought I was unemployed. My family thought I was failing. Derek's face had gone completely white. But you weren't failing, Sarah prompted. No. I was building the foundation for what would become the most advanced AI system in the world. I was writing code that would eventually be worth billions. I was creating something that the Pentagon, Google, and Amazon would all want. I just wasn't telling anyone about it. Why not? I looked around the table at my family. Because they wouldn't have believed me. Because they'd already decided I was a failure. Because it was easier to work in peace than to fight for validation I didn't need. Sarah's pen flew across her notebook. Your first major contract was with a defense contractor, correct? How did that come about? I entered a DARPA competition for autonomous systems. My algorithm won. The prize was $2 million and a contract to develop the technology further. That was my seed funding. You were 23, Sarah said. Most 23-year-olds are just starting entry-level jobs. You were already building AI for the Department of Defense. I had something they needed. Age didn't matter. Uncle Richard was scrolling through his phone, his face growing paler by the second. The DARPA challenge. I remember reading about that. The winner was anonymous. They just listed the company as ND Systems. That was you. Neural Dynamics, I confirmed. We used the abbreviation in the early days. Sarah continued. After the DARPA contract, you expanded quickly. Can you walk me through the growth? I hired carefully. Only the best engineers, people who understood what we were building. We stayed small, deliberately. 12 engineers the first year. 25 the second. 50 by year 3. We didn't need massive teams because the technology was so advanced it could do the work of hundreds of traditional AI systems. And you maintained full ownership during this time? Yes. I funded expansion through contracts. Every dollar we made went back into the company. I kept my own expenses minimal. The 2-bedroom apartment, Sarah interjected. You still live there, correct? I do. It's quiet. It's comfortable. It's close to our headquarters. Why would I move? Amanda was reading something on her phone, her face a mask of disbelief. Your headquarters is the Genesis Tower. The entire 47th floor. That building costs. The rent alone must be 47 floors, I corrected quietly. We occupy floors 30 through 47. We bought the building last year. It was more cost-effective than renting. Derek made a sound like he was choking. Sarah flipped through her notes. Let's talk about the Series C funding round. $800 million from Sequoia Capital and Andreessen Horowitz. That valued your company at $4.1 billion. Why did you finally decide to accept outside investment after 6 years of bootstrapping? We needed capital to scale faster. The technology was ready for global deployment, but that required infrastructure we couldn't build fast enough with just contract revenue. The Series C gave us the resources to expand internationally while I maintained control of the company. You retained 68% ownership. That's unusual for a Series C. Most founders are diluted significantly by that stage. I negotiated from a position of strength. They wanted in more than I needed them. We had multiple firms competing for the deal. I set the terms. Jennifer was reading aloud from her phone now, her voice shaking. Sophia Reynolds, 29, is the youngest female self-made billionaire in the technology sector. Her company, Neural Dynamics, has revolutionized artificial intelligence with proprietary neural network architecture that outperforms existing models by a factor of 10. The company currently employs 1,200 people across offices in San Francisco, New York, London, and Singapore. 1,200 employees, Dad said numbly. As of last month, I confirmed. We're hiring another 300 this quarter. Sarah leaned forward. Your technology is being described as the most significant advancement in AI since deep learning. Can you explain in layman's terms what makes neural dynamics different? Traditional AI systems learn from data, but they can't truly adapt. They're static. Our systems can actually evolve. They learn from their mistakes, adjust their algorithms in real time, and improve autonomously. It's the difference between a calculator and a student. One follows programmed instructions. The other actually learns and grows. And this is the technology you developed in your bedroom, Sarah said. In my second bedroom, yes. It started with an idea. Then code. Then testing. Then refinement. Then more code. For 2 years, it was just me and my laptop. Then I brought on my first engineer. Then the second. We built something extraordinary while everyone thought I was failing. Brian was reading a different article now. Neural Dynamics' proprietary technology is estimated to be worth over $6 billion in licensing deals alone over the next 5 years. The company's contracts with the U.S. Department of Defense, Google Cloud Services, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft Azure position it as the dominant player in enterprise AI solutions. $6 billion in licensing, Uncle Richard repeated. Over 5 years. Conservative estimate, I said. We have 17 additional contracts in negotiation. And we're expanding into healthcare AI next quarter. The medical applications alone could double our valuation. Mom had tears streaming down her face, though she wasn't making a sound. Sarah checked her recorder. Let's talk about your personal wealth. Forbes estimates your net worth at $2.8 billion. Is that accurate? Based on my ownership stake, yes. Though that's just paper value. I don't plan to sell. You live quite modestly for a billionaire. The 2-bedroom apartment, the 2015 Honda Civic, the Target dress you mentioned in our preliminary interview. Why? Because I don't need more than I have. My apartment is comfortable. My car runs fine. My clothes are appropriate. I'd rather invest in my company and my employees than in luxury I don't need. I paused. Though I did buy my first real asset last month. Oh. Sarah looked intrigued. A penthouse in this building actually. The Riverside Estate building. Top floor. I close on it next week. Figured it was time to have a place for entertaining. The apartment isn't great for dinner parties. The table went silent. Even Sarah looked surprised. This building. Mom whispered. The penthouse here costs $23 million, Derek said faintly. I looked at it last year. It was out of my budget. It was a good investment, I said simply. The location is perfect, the views are spectacular, and I liked the building's architecture. Plus, the restaurant downstairs is excellent. I've had the food, obviously. Sarah was scribbling notes frantically. This is perfect. Billionaire AI CEO buys $23 million penthouse but still works from her bedroom. Our readers will love that. I'll work from the penthouse once I move in, I clarified. One of the bedrooms will be my office. I like working from home. Amanda was crying now too, mascara running down her cheeks. Sophia, we didn't. You didn't know, I finished quietly. I know. Sarah looked between us, sensing the story beneath the story. Ms. Reynolds, is it true that your family didn't know about your success? They knew I was working on something. They just didn't believe it was real. Why not? I looked at Derek, at his shocked face, at the wine still spreading across the tablecloth. Because success doesn't always look the way people expect it to. Because I worked from a bedroom instead of an office. Because I drove an old car and wore cheap clothes. Because I didn't fit their definition of achievement. Derek's voice, when he finally found it, was barely a whisper. The family disappointment. That's what you called me, I said. Not cruelly. Just factually. Earlier tonight. You said I was the family disappointment. Pathetic. A failure. I didn't know. Would it have mattered if you did? I asked. If I'd told you 3 years ago that I was building a billion-dollar company, would you have believed me? Or would you have told me I was delusional? The silence answered the question. Sarah was watching our family with professional detachment, but I could see the story forming in her mind. This wasn't just about a successful startup anymore. This was about family, assumptions, and the cost of underestimation. Ms. Reynolds, she said carefully, how did it feel knowing your family thought you were failing while you were building one of the most valuable AI companies in the world? I considered the question. Outside the windows, the city lights sparkled on the water. And somewhere in that skyline was my building, my company, my empire built in silence while my family built their assumptions. Lonely sometimes, I admitted. But also freeing. When no one expects anything from you, you can build without pressure. Without judgment. Without having to prove yourself at every step. I could just work. And now? Sarah prompted. Now that they know? I looked around the table at my family. At Dad's stunned face, at Derek's shame, at Amanda's tears, at Uncle Richard's disbelief. Now, I said quietly, they have to decide if they can accept that they were wrong. That the daughter they wrote off as a failure is actually more successful than they imagined. That their assumptions cost them 7 years of actually knowing me. Dad finally spoke, his voice cracking. Sophia, I don't know what to say. Happy birthday would be a start, I said gently. That's why we're here, isn't it? I called you a disappointment, Derek said, and he was crying now too. God, Sophia, I called you pathetic. I offered you entry-level work. I said you were the family failure. You did, I agreed. You all did in one way or another. For 7 years you assumed I was struggling. You offered me charity jobs. You pitied me. You never once asked what I was actually building. You just decided I was failing and treated me accordingly. We should have known, Amanda said. We should have trusted you. You should have asked, I corrected. You should have been curious instead of judgmental. You should have considered that maybe, just maybe, I knew what I was doing. Sarah's recorder was still running, capturing every word. Ms. Reynolds, she said, what would you say to other young entrepreneurs whose families don't believe in them? I thought about it. About the 7 years of working in silence. About the dinner parties where I was the punchline. About the job offers that were really charity. About being called a disappointment while I was changing the world. I'd say that belief has to come from within. That external validation is nice, but it's not necessary. That if you know you're building something real, something valuable, then keep building. Let your work speak for itself. And when the time comes, when the truth can no longer be ignored, make sure you've built something so undeniable that the doubters have no choice but to see you clearly. And have you? Sarah asked. Built something undeniable? I smiled. I built a company worth $4.1 billion from a bedroom in a 2-bedroom apartment. I employ 1,200 people. I have contracts with the Pentagon and every major tech company in the world. I'm about to close on a $23 million penthouse. And I did it all while my family thought I was unemployed. I paused. So yes, Sarah. I'd say I built something fairly undeniable. Sarah closed her notebook, a satisfied smile on her face. This is going to be our best 30 under 30-foot profile yet. Ms. Reynolds, thank you for your time. I'll email you the draft next week for approval before publication. Actually, I said, could you include one more thing? Of course. What's that? I looked at my father, at his 65 years, at his pride in his own accomplishments, at his shock at mine. Include that I'm announcing a new initiative tonight at my father's birthday dinner. Neural Dynamics is creating a $500 million fund for young entrepreneurs whose families don't support them. Full funding, no equity required, just belief in their vision. Because I remember what it's like to build in the darkness. And I want to be the light for others. Dad made a sound like a sob. That's beautiful, Sarah said, writing quickly. A $500 million fund. That's incredibly generous. It's incredibly strategic, I corrected. The best ideas often come from people everyone underestimates. I should know. Sarah packed up her equipment, thanked me again, and left with Thomas. The private dining room felt very quiet in her absence. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Dad stood up, walked around the table, and pulled me into a hug. He was shaking. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, Sophia, I'm so sorry. I know, Dad. How can we fix this? How can we make this right? I pulled back, looking at him. At all of them. You can start by understanding that I don't need fixing. I never did. You can start by trusting that when someone says they're building something, maybe they are. You can start by being curious instead of critical. By asking instead of assuming. We wasted 7 years, Derek said, his voice hollow. 7 years of treating you like a failure when you were changing the world, Amanda finished. You were literally changing the world, and we were offering you social media jobs. I wasn't trying to prove anything to you, I said. I was trying to build something meaningful. Something real. The fact that you didn't see it says more about your expectations than my achievements. Uncle Richard stood up. Sophia, I need to apologize. I offered you an entry-level job tonight. I told you that you were wasting your potential. I said you needed to be practical. He laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that comes from disbelief. You're worth more than my entire fund. You've achieved more than I will in my lifetime. And I told you to be practical. You meant well, I said. Did I? He shook his head. Or did I just assume that because you didn't look successful you weren't? That because you didn't brag about your achievements they didn't exist? The servers brought coffee and dessert. A custom birthday cake for Dad with edible gold leaf and fresh berries. No one touched it. I want to understand, Mom said quietly. Sophia, help me understand. Why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were struggling? Because I was busy building, Mom. And because... I paused, choosing my words carefully. Because I needed to know I could do it without your approval. Without anyone's approval. I needed to prove to myself that I was capable of building something extraordinary. And I did. But we could have supported you, she said. We could have been part of your success. Could you? I asked gently. Mom, be honest. If I told you 3 years ago that I was building an AI company in my bedroom, what would you have said? She was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, I would have told you to get a real job. Exactly. So I didn't tell you. I just built. And when I had something undeniable, when I had a $4.1 billion company that even Forbes wanted to write about, then you couldn't tell me it wasn't real. You couldn't tell me to be practical. You could only see what I'd actually accomplished. Derek was still staring at his phone, scrolling through articles about neural dynamics. You're on the cover of TechCrunch. You gave a keynote at TED. You're advising the president on AI policy. How did we not know any of this? Because you weren't looking, I said simply. You decided I was a failure and you stopped seeing me. You saw a bedroom office and cheap clothes and drew conclusions. You never asked what I was actually doing. You never wanted to know. I want to know now, Amanda said. Sophia, tell us everything. Tell us about your company, your technology, your plans. We want to understand. I looked at the birthday cake, at the gold leaf glittering under the soft lighting, at my family's expectant faces. The short version: Neural Dynamics is pioneering adaptive artificial intelligence. We're teaching machines to actually think, not just process. We have contracts with governments and corporations around the world. We're expanding into healthcare, finance, and environmental protection. In 5 years, our technology will be integrated into systems that affect billions of lives. And I built it all from a 2-bedroom apartment while you thought I was unemployed. The long version? Dad asked. The long version would take hours. But I can give you a tour of the headquarters sometime. Show you what I've built. Introduce you to my team. Help you understand what I've been doing for the past 7 years while you were judging me. We'd like that, he said. We'd like that very much. Jennifer raised her hand tentatively. Can I ask a question? It might be stupid. Go ahead. You're worth $2.8 billion. You could afford anything. Designer clothes, luxury cars, a mansion. Why don't you? I smiled. Because those things don't make me happy. Building does. Creating does. Solving problems does. I don't need a Ferrari to prove I'm successful. I have a company that's changing the world. That's enough. But the penthouse, Derek started, is a practical decision. I need space to entertain clients and investors. The apartment works for daily life, but I need something more professional for business. So I bought it. But I'm not buying it to impress anyone. I'm buying it because it serves a purpose. Brian leaned forward. Sophia, I have to ask. The social media job I offered you. Were you offended? No, I said honestly. You were trying to help based on what you thought you knew. It wasn't malicious. Just misinformed. Everything we said tonight, Derek said slowly. Every judgment, every criticism, every piece of advice. We were completely wrong about everything. Yes, I said simply. How do we make this right? I looked at my brother, at his genuine remorse, at the dawning understanding that he'd spent 7 years underestimating his little sister. You start, I said, by seeing me. Not the version you assumed. Not the failure you imagined. Just me, Sophia Reynolds, CEO of Neural Dynamics, builder of billion-dollar companies. Your sister who happens to be really, really good at artificial intelligence. And really, really patient with judgmental families, Amanda added quietly. That too, I agreed. Dad cut the cake, his hands still shaking slightly. We ate in near silence, the weight of revelation heavy in the air. Finally, Uncle Richard spoke. Sophia, that $500 million fund you announced. Is that real? I'm announcing it in tomorrow's board meeting. It'll launch within the quarter. That's extraordinary. That's necessary. There are brilliant people out there whose families don't believe in them. Whose parents want them to be lawyers or doctors or bankers instead of founders. Who here get a real job, instead of, tell me about your vision. I want to fund those people. Because I was one of them. You don't have to do this alone anymore, Mom said. We want to support you now. However we can. I set down my fork. Mom, I appreciate that. But I need you to understand something. I've never been alone. I have a team of 1,200 people who believe in what we're building. I have investors who trust my vision. I have clients who rely on our technology. I have a community of engineers and researchers who understand what I'm creating. I've never needed your support to succeed. I would have liked it, yes. But I didn't need it. The words landed like stones. What can we do? Derek asked. How can we be part of your life now? You can start by being curious instead of critical. By asking about my work instead of assuming you know. By understanding that success looks different for everyone. By trusting me when I say I'm building something real. We trust you now, Amanda said. Now that you have proof, I pointed out. Now that Forbes confirmed it. Now that you've seen the numbers. But what about next time? What about when I start my next venture and it looks crazy at first? Will you trust me then? Or will you wait for external validation again? The question hung in the air. I'll trust you, Dad said quietly. I promise. No more assumptions. No more judgment. Just trust. We all will, Derek added, and the others nodded. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to think that this dinner had changed something fundamental. But I knew the truth. People don't change overnight. They might mean well. They might want to be different. But patterns run deep. I hope so, I said. Because I'm just getting started. Neural dynamics is just the beginning. I have ideas for the next company. And the one after that. And the one after that. I'm going to build things that haven't been imagined yet. I'm going to change industries. I'm going to make impacts that ripple through generations. And I'm going to do it whether you believe in me or not. We believe in you, Mom said. Then prove it, I said gently. Not with words. With actions. With curiosity. With support that doesn't require Forbes to validate it first. The dinner wound down slowly. Servers cleared plates. Coffee was refilled. The birthday celebration that had started with judgment ended with stunned silence and dawning comprehension. As we prepared to leave, Derek pulled me aside. Sophia, I know I don't deserve to ask, but could I tour your headquarters? Could you show me what you built? I looked at my brother, at his genuine interest, at the request that would have meant everything 7 years ago. Monday at 9, I said. Floors 30 through 47. Wear comfortable shoes. It's a lot to cover. His face lit up. Thank you. Seriously. Thank you. Bring Amanda if she wants. And anyone else from the family who's curious. They'll all want to come. Then they can. I've never been ashamed of what I built. I just didn't feel the need to prove it to people who'd already decided I was failing. We walked out together, the family who'd gathered to celebrate Dad's 65 years, who'd ended up witnessing a revelation they'd never expected. In the valet line, Derek's luxury sedan pulled up next to my 2015 Honda Civic. He looked at both cars and laughed. You could buy 100 of my cars, he said. I could, I agreed. But this one runs fine. Why would I? Because you can? That's not a good enough reason. I buy things that serve a purpose, Derek. Not things that serve ego. He was quiet for a moment. That's what I'm going to tell my kids. The story of Aunt Sophia who built a $4 billion company from her bedroom and still drives a 2015 Civic because it runs fine. Tell them the other part too, I said. Tell them that everyone told me I was failing. Everyone assumed I was struggling. Everyone offered me charity. And I built something extraordinary anyway. Why? What's the lesson in that? I climbed into my Civic looking up at my brother through the open door. The lesson is that belief has to come from within. That external validation is nice but not necessary. That you can change the world while everyone around you thinks you're failing. And that when you finally prove them wrong, you don't gloat. You just keep building. I drove home to my 2-bedroom apartment, parked in my spot under the building I'd later bought and renovated, and walked up to the 2nd bedroom where I'd built my empire. My laptop was still on my desk. The same laptop I'd used to write the first lines of code 7 years ago. The same desk where I'd designed algorithms that now ran on servers around the world. I sat down, opened my email, and started drafting the announcement for the $500 million entrepreneurship fund. Because tomorrow was Monday. And Monday meant work. And work was what I did best. Success didn't look like luxury cars or designer clothes or mansions. Success looked like code that changed the world. Like technology that mattered. Like building something so real, so valuable, so undeniable that even the doubters had to see it. Success looked like a 2-bedroom apartment and a Target dress and a $4.1 billion company. Success looked like me. And I was just getting started.